somebody else.
Byron, I think what Sammy has just said and is the reason that the Old Testament is so tough on this. You know, I taught Old Testament, and defending the Old Testament with students, one of the questions was, why is this sin so objectionable to God that it is a life and death matter? And the reason is, I think ultimately that's what it is. And so we have a different position on it than anybody else in the world, because when Uzziah went in and sacrificed and did what he shouldn't do, and God struck him with leprosy, he said, "You're touching a holy thing." Miriam, complaining against Moses, ended up a leper. She had touched something holy. When we touch the holiest thing in human existence, apart from our relationship to God, is our relationship to the opposite sex and our wife. And if this is in our life, we've been unfaithful. First to God, and he does not deal with it lightly. Something stripping takes place in a man's soul when he begins to play with this.
We're going to go to another question, and I know, Greg, there's a sense in which the question didn't get fully answered probably, but there's probably some materials out there. I know when they're in the Swigert and Baker era, Swindoll and MacArthur and others, and really walked through in some books on how do we deal with this, etc.
My question in regards to that, Sammy, is if a pastor has looked at pornography in the last year, should he step down from the church? And is that the same degree as far as something in your staff? If we're at a church and a staff member has one time, I think his question was...
And a janitor?
Has looked at something, does that mean they're disqualified from ministry forever, for a while, at that church?
My personal conviction is yes, a pastor should step down. Yes, a janitor should step down. Yes, any church staff member should step down. And now, you say, why are we shooting the wounded? We're not shooting the wounded. That pastor needs help. And he'll not get help as long as he's in the position that he's in, ministering to others when he's going through this. I've had people come to me and say, well, this guy, you know, he did this and now we need to restore him. The best way you're going to restore him is to get him into some ministry, some biblical counseling, some help. Let him be vulnerable and honest and transparent before the people and say, I'm struggling. I got a problem, folks. And because I have a problem, you know, I need to step down, and you may never want me back again, but I need to get some help before I get back in this pulpit. I want you to know and have the assurance when I stand in this pulpit that I have total victory. My experience, and this is just my experience, it is only found out when you normally find out, whether it's adultery, pornography, when that comes out to light, it has been there a long time. And so therefore, when it comes to light, you say, okay, well, he confessed it. Let's all gather around. And yeah, let's gather around him. But how do we gather around him and help him? The best way to help him is not to put him back on the platform. He's going to be right back in the middle of the battle. Let's get him into a place where we say we're going to love him, we're going to help him, we're going to stand with him to get deliverance, and we're going to do this until he is assured and we are assured that he's ready to stand back in that pulpit or on that platform and minister. So I think my perspective is not to shoot him, but the best way to help him is to bring him. And by the way, we tried to do this, and there was not that repentance that took place. We would have worked that way completely with this particular staff member had there been that repentance that I had seen.
I think there are two different issues there, really. One is to love a man and to work with him on the issues of his life from a spiritual standpoint. The other side is him being put in a position of ministry and leadership. And I think you're putting a guy in a very precarious place spiritually when he is just freshly dealt with an issue, to leave him in a position of ministry. It's not a loving thing to do to him, and it's not a helpful thing to do. And of course, there are degrees of all that. But.
And Bill, we worked together in a situation, and I think we discovered this: the best place for once there's repentance, the best place for restoration is the place of failure. Then they never question if those people knew who they confessed to really loved them or not. We tend to send them away someplace to counseling, and then they wonder if they really knew. If we sweep it under the carpet, and if they really knew, would they still love me? They need love. So in our situation, we say the place of restoration was the place of failure, made arrangements so those people that he knew where he failed loved him in the midst of and through of. But that doesn't mean the position of failure ought to be the position during restoration. That was, yes, sir.
First of all, the first part is absolutely. There's got to be the counseling. And I can say to you that with everything else I said that may have sounded harsh, we went that was the route we went. And I think Byron was involved in this enough to testify to this. Our first thing was counseling. Actually, I have to tell you, there were two people involved in this. And one went to counseling, and one was totally restored to everything. And that person is doing wonderful. And I can see restoration, I can see growth, I can see God at work. And the other one, I'm not sure where he's at, but because there was never that.
And he is too.
Huh?
And he is too. Any ministry, but doing some behind, but doing wonderful.
But so I think that's what we have to do is try to help. Now, as far as the public, I think it has that has to do with. There's a lot of variables in the answer to that question. So
Over here on the right.
yeah.
I can answer. We have 200 and some computers, or 300 and some, they tell me. And I don't know. I know internally we have a system where that happens regularly, but we have a way of detecting and then a way of treating that because it's going to happen. There's no question.
One thing too that I do in my office, if there's any time that kind of thing, we have a lot of protections that prevent a lot of that stuff. First of all, and you can get some stuff, but the second thing, if anything like that comes up, I immediately go to somebody and say, "Hey, this just happened here. I want you to know this just happened."